Hi, and welcome to Sustainably Geeky, episode 4. We are going to be talking about water conservation today, and I am joined by our regular cast. I'm Jennifer. Stefan is here.
Hey everybody.
Jen is here, and
Hello.
Chris, all the way in Canada. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about water conservation, and this episode's just kind of to focus on why it's important, what it means, and ways that the everyday person can conserve water. So I think that a lot of people have the misconception that because the world is covered in water and over 70% of the planet is covered in water, that we don't need to be careful with that resource and that we can just use it indiscriminately and it'll always come back to us. But the reason we need to be careful and try to conserve, well, one of the many reasons is that most of that water is actually salt water, and it's not usable for consumption or for most of the things that we would need it for in everyday life. So that leaves us with a very small amount that we can actually use in our house, and that means that every drop that we use may or may not end up back in a place where we can actually get benefit from it. So yeah, did anyone else have anything, want to say anything else about that before we kind of move into how you can conserve?
And back off of what you were mentioning. I think if my information is still correct, it's about 3% of the water we have on the planet is actually fresh water, and 1% is actually drinkable. So that kind of puts it a little bit in perspective.
Yeah, and that leaves a very, very small amount, like we were saying. And you can take the salt out of the water, but it's a very expensive process. It's very difficult, and to transport it to the people that need it makes it really uneconomical in a big scale, at least right now, until scientists come up with a better way to do that, I think. Chris or Stefan, anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if anyone is wondering whether what's being proposed is drinking less water, the answer is no. No, drinking water is great. Drink as much water as you need to and want to. The issue is more how we use fresh water for other uses that may not be very important, and other ways that we can conserve that.
Exactly. And we the main way that we use it is we consume it, drink it, and we cook with it, but also we water plants with it. And you can't water plants with salt water. Salt tends to kill crops. That's kind of what people put in the earth to make things stop growing. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to conserve what we have, and there's a lot of things that can cause water to be undrinkable, not just being salt water, but being polluted, being inaccessible, or et cetera, et cetera. There's political things that go into it. But yeah, we use it for so much, and there's so many little things that we do that add up, especially with the population growing as much as it is, that we've got to be more and more careful with every drop that we have now. So with that, we'll kind of start talking about, I guess, things that we can do to make a difference. And does anyone have anything they want to jump in with first?
I'll go.
Okay.
The easiest one for me to get everybody in my household on board was just shutting off the water when you're brushing your teeth. A lot of people just keep it on and just run it under a brush, and then it keeps going. But if they just, wet your toothbrush, or even better, if you wanted to, some people think it's gross, if you just grab a cup and fill it up and then just use that without turning on and on the faucet.
I do that too.
I do that when we're camping. But yeah, just turning off the faucet when you're brushing your teeth saves a lot of water, even though it's it's only 2 minutes you're supposed to brush your teeth, but it does waste a lot of water when you're keeping the faucet on.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up on that, speaking of morning routines, you actually stole mine, Chris. So that's
I'm
good.
sorry.
No, that's great. And yeah, then like let's say, again, going with this theme, you brush your teeth, and now you're like, I want to get nice and clean. So you hop in the shower. So I think one simple thing people can do that doesn't require purchasing any gadget or anything is just to take shorter showers. Not necessarily. I mean, a person doesn't have to like go crazy, but I mean, even just deciding, okay, I'm not going to stand under the shower head and just luxuriate for 15 minutes in the hot water. I know it feels wonderful, it feels great, but that's just a simple way that we can cut down on our water use too.
I read a really great thing on Instagram about that today. Just as a timer, you bring your cell phone in or whatever that plays music and make your shower 2 to 3 songs long. And then once you finish that last song, then your shower's done. Because that'll be like,
Great idea.
Well, depends on how long the song is, like 9 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
American
you-
Pie, for instance.
Yes, unless it's American Pie and like Bohemian Rhapsody back to back. But then
We do a lot of outreach and education at the schools, and one of the things we used to hand out as a giveaway was a shower timer, and it was just like a little thing that had a suction cup on it, and they could stick it in their shower with, when they were in there, and it was kind of almost a game, and so they got excited about trying to beat the clock, get in and out of the shower before it would, buzz.
That's pretty cool. I like that. Especially with kids. I think if you make it a
Mhm.
game, they're more likely to do it, like with the brushing the teeth. I know there's like a timer for that, so you could easily bring that into, taking a shower, bath, or whatever. So, yeah,
I
that's
also
a
just
good
kind
one.
of wanted to throw out the majority of the water that you use in your household, or the average American, if you will, is they use the most of their water on irrigation, so just keeping a green grass all year long.
Yeah.
And I know that's a big culture here in Texas. So if you can, just try to promote xeriscaping. It's very popular in the desert, where you just have rocks and plants and cactus, and it still looks wonderful. And you don't have to worry about watering your lawn all the time and spending money on that.
Yeah, and it also, if you use native plants along with that, it uses less water. If you try to bring in all these plants that aren't from your climate, you're going to have to water them more. You're going to use more water that way. On the same token, if you are going to water your lawn and, keep that beautiful lush green grass, don't do it in the middle of the day. When it's hottest, I go crazy when I drive by businesses and houses that have the sprinkler on, the dead of the day with the sun right overhead. For one thing, the water evaporates, so hardly any of it gets to the plants. And also it can burn the plants when it's going in there and the sun's shining directly on it. So that's a big one that, a lot of people do. And if you do have a sprinkler, make sure it's actually going in your lawn and not watering the sidewalk. Because that's another thing I see a lot, is just we're watering the pavement, and obviously the pavement is not permeable, so all the water just runs off and gets wasted.
Yeah, there's some native plant and grass species that do really well in Texas for our climate. So if anyone's interested in putting in new grass or plants, those lists are all online. And just kind of piggybacking on you again, I think if you water at like 4 or 5 a.m., that's typically the best time for your grass, and it will absorb the most water as well.
Yeah, and I've read up a little bit on this recently, only because we're thinking about re-landscaping our front yard, and we've looked into xeriscaping, which would be awesome. And however, if somebody really loves just that lush green lawn, then, like you said, Jen, buying a grass that's native to Texas that can withstand drought is the ideal. And then on top of that, people actually have to water their lawns a lot less frequently than they think. Like, for example, I think my parents grew up in the generation where they just assumed that they had to turn on the sprinklers every single morning. But what I found out is actually that's bad for the grass, is that you have to give them a few days for the roots to go down deep into the ground to seek out water. And that actually contributes to stronger, healthier grass. So what I've found just in my research online is like people need to water their lawns no more than twice a week, even if that. I mean, sometimes even once a week. So
Yeah, if you do it for longer periods of time, like you were, it's like when you're planting trees and things like that, you don't water the tree every single day once you plant it. You give it a good long drink once a week so that it encourages the roots to grow down. So it makes it stronger. It's the same with grass and any plant. You only need to water it really well once a week, and that will make it healthier. And then you have plants that are more hardier and more resistant when it doesn't rain.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I learned too is we also would hand out these little rain gauges. They're just these tiny little squares. It's 1 cubic square inch, and it'll let you know when you've had 1 inch of water on your lawn, whether it was a rain event or from your sprinkler system. So that would let you know that you only need to, have your system on for a certain amount of time, because everyone's sprinklers are a little bit different and they never really know how long they should leave that system on. And it's typically about 45 minutes, but it could be a little bit more or less. So that little rain gauge is something great. You can just stick in your grass, and once you see that it's full, then okay, I've timed it and I only need to have my water on for 30 minutes once or twice a week, depending on the climate and what's going on. And if you've had a rain event, then you don't have to turn it on at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point, because you do see a lot of sprinklers running when it's raining or right after rain, because they don't have any system set up, or they just don't pay attention. And I get it. Once in a while, you'll miss, but you could save a lot of money too, just by not. If it rains, that's free. You just watered your lawn for free, so why do it double? Something else people can do, and this may not be feasible for everyone, but collecting rainwater, and collecting gray water, which is the water from your house that you can't reuse for drinking, but you can reuse to water your lawn. That's a great option too. And I know in our area, there's a lot of organizations that do free classes to build your own rain barrel. Go to Lowe's or Home Depot or something similar to buy one and set it up. But that's something that a lot of people are doing now to help, keep their bill down and still keep that nice green grass going.
Thanks for
Do any of
bringing
y'all
that up.
have experience with that, or?
I was actually going to ask you guys, because I've heard a lot about rain barrels and stuff, but to my own shame, I haven't really investigated it to find out exactly how it's used practically. So I'd like to hear your experiences on how those are used.
We've installed some rainwater harvesting tanks on Fort Hood, just on some of our office buildings. And those are probably much larger scale than, what you would do in your house. But in general, if you have a gutter system, then you would just put that downspout into the top of your rain barrel. And they sell them at, the stores and stuff. But we've also connected those to like a weather station. So if you've had a rain event, it won't turn on, and it kind of gives like a feedback loop to that system. Obviously, it costs a little bit more, but if you're really interested in it, there are some cost-effective ways to do that as well. But you can sometimes connect the rainwater harvesting tank to a sprinkler system. You can also connect it to drip irrigation. So if you have zero-scaped your lawn, you don't need to have sprinklers. You can just buy it's just the tubing, and you can put holes in it wherever your plants are, and it slowly releases water into those plants. But we've been pretty happy with the rainwater harvesting, and we actually had some massive rain events when we first installed them, so they were kind of overflowing at a certain point. But yeah, I think the folks we know that use them at their homes, they seem to be really happy with them, and it's great for
That's
your
awesome.
plants.
I've seen like articles about how to build your own out of a big garbage container or other items. So if you're interested in making your own, there's a way to do that. But you can also, like she said, buy them fully made, and They're relatively easy to hook up, I believe, if you have a gutter system, especially. And usually they have a spout or a spigot that you can turn on and off to apply, or fill up your pail or whatever. So I don't have gutters on my house, and I don't have that set up yet, but someday.
So the way that our house is designed, whenever it rains, we don't have like rain gutters on all edges of the roof, but when it does rain, it kind of water falls over the edge and it lands in this koi and goldfish pond that we have. So I don't have to put
cool.
chlorine, water in there and dechlorinate it and keep the fish alive. It's just kind of my little Zen oasis out there. But every time we get rain, it just goes straight from the roof, like right in there. So it works out pretty
cool.
nice. That's my own version of rainwater harvesting.
So are you one of those people that actually does the things that you see on Pinterest and YouTube?
Yeah, I think so. Well, so we're also on a septic system out here, so I don't use potable water to water the grass. Everything we use in the house ends up going out of the septic tank and sprays on the grass and everything. So yeah, it's kind of nice to not have like an expensive water bill. It's typically $30 a month for us, and we have a pretty decent sized house.
Nice. That's cool. I will say I've never had a rain system like that. I did try collecting water in just a garbage pail, and that didn't work out because animals tend to get in that, and then you have to deal with, so don't do that. Don't take the shortcut. Should go without saying, but I thought, what could happen? I'm just going to put it in this bucket. So,
But hey, you made an effort.
I did, but I unfortunately killed a couple of birds and little critters, so because they drowned in it, and it was gross. But
dear.
Oh, so is that why bird baths are so shallow? No, that's good to know. I honestly didn't know that. Makes sense.
Yeah, well, there was a bird. There was, I think, like a raccoon at one point. I don't know. I couldn't tell what it was. Had to call animal control. Anyways, it was gross. I had something else about yards. So not directly like related to your conservation, like for your use, kind of an indirect one, I guess. But when you cut your grass or you do yard work, don't let the brush just wash away into the street, because then it goes into the sewer system and it can contaminate and pollute the water supply, because that depending on your city, a lot of times will end up back in the lakes or the rivers or whatever, and that's not always good because we put chemicals in our yard and we put animal waste gets in there. So just being cognizant of the water quality from that, because that all ends up back in your house, and then you have to treat the water even more, and it's a big thing. So
speaking about the lake, I just got recent numbers, and I think despite all our recent rain events that we've had, which were amazing because we hadn't had rain in a while, I think we're still about 4 feet below our conservation level at Lake Belton, which is where we get our drinking water for pretty much all the cities around us in the region. So just keep that in mind. Don't be wasteful, and keep a lookout on what our water levels are before you start, washing your car in the driveway or whatever.
Do cities typically that have a integrated water system? Do they typically kind of separate out water for? I guess I don't know if they could. Maybe they can't. Like water for drinking versus water for other uses like irrigation or whatever, shower. Or, I don't know.
No,
probably not
typically.
Right? Yeah.
There's just one water pipe that comes out of the lake, and you can see it if you go around the lake. There's a couple that I think one goes up north to Gatesville, and one comes to Temple Belton area, maybe even does Salado get? I don't know if Salado gets Temple or Lake Belton water or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know
there's just these big, huge pipes that suck the water out, and they treat it with chemicals like fluoride and chlorine and all that loveliness. So Um, I think I showed it on a previous show, but I bought a Berkey. It's like a water filtration system, so you're not always buying, bottled water or trusting what's in your tap water. So that's just something to think about too. But I always think, like, if I need to, if that water pipe goes out of business, I can just get water from the lake and put it in my Berkey, because it is like one of the best filtration systems out there.
Yeah.
Google it.
Got yourself
So the moral is, even if you've had a lot of rain in your community, no matter where you are, if you were previously in a drought, you probably still don't have enough water, or you need to check. Don't assume, because you could have started out severely low and the rain may not have completely replenished your water supply.
We also have a water master that's been assigned to our region, and so all the cities in Fort Hood have to meet regularly with the water master. It's a new title that they've come up with, and I guess he kind of helps, he or she regulates, water use and water rights, and all of that is going to continue to be a subject that we need to pay attention to as we continue to grow and our population increases, and the need to irrigate for growing our food and all those things. They have to balance all of that out. So pay attention to what's going on in politics with all of that as well.
I used to be a webmaster.
I don't think it's
Well,
quite
now
the
you
same.
can be a water master. It's a new thing, apparently.
I just picture like a wizard that has water gushing around him. Like, how cool would that be?
I know, right?
All right. Anything else with yards or the outdoors, or anything related to that y'all can think of? I know there's tons of things, but for the moment, do we want to delve into any other?
I mean, the one last thing I would mention, and maybe this is obvious to most people, just a small thing, and that is to get a adapter. I can't think of the word right now, but to put on the end of your hose. If you use the hose in your yard very often, just get one of those things that you can. When you're not squeezing it, there's no water coming out, so you have to squeeze it to whatever those are called.
Mm-hmm. A nozzle, or like a
nozzle. That's the
nozzle
word.
Or a sprayer. I don't know. Yeah. Very good point. All right. Well, let's move indoors for a little bit. And we kind of started out talking about, ways to conserve in the bathroom. I think in a previous show, we mentioned putting a bottle filled with rocks in your toilet tank to take up space, basically, so you use less water when you flush. And we've also talked about flushing less if you're okay with that. Some people can't do that, but and there's toilets that are lower, that use less water, or that half flush. They do less water if you go number one, and they're more water if you go number two, and you can kind of select that. So if you're in the market to get new appliances, look into those things, because those can save you money in the long run because you're using less water.
Yeah, no question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you had mentioned using the aerators on all of the sinks, right?
Yes, I'm a huge fan of those, and they've been great. And my wife is totally on board, which is great. I was a little bit worried because the stream of water that comes out, it isn't like a smooth single stream. It's kind of like 50 tiny little streams around the perimeter of the faucet head. But it's worked out fine. No complaints from her or from any guests that have come through. And I mean, it's like we're using, I don't know, I think a quarter or something of the water that we used to use, or maybe it's like a quarter, something like that. So
that's awesome.
One thing I'd mention is it's more on the electric side of things, but they've changed the laws or the sizing of what your hot water heater can be moving forward. So if your hot water heater goes out, it might not fit the new one that you have to maybe buy, but won't necessarily fit in the existing space that you have. I think it's a little bit fatter than the old versions of that. So a lot of people have been talking about moving towards on-demand hot water heaters. So this ties in with water conservation, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't want to just get in the shower when it's cold and you have to kind of wait for the water to get hot, and that can take a while depending on how far away your hot water heater is from where you're taking your shower or washing your face in the sink. And so that's just something to consider if you're looking into that type of thing or needing a new hot water heater. There's these on-demand systems that are right next to your bathroom or kitchen area, and it'll turn right on the minute you kind of try to turn on the hot water. So you'd be using a lot less water with that.
Yeah, I've heard about those, and I've heard they're great for the reason you mentioned. Basically, you don't have to wait as long for the water to heat up. So are they like these little, like miniature tankless systems that you put, say, underneath the sink or something like that?
Yeah, I think it just uses maybe electricity or converts it somehow, but the water stream becomes hot as it's going through the water line, and it heats it up right in the water line, instead of having to constantly have a hot water heater that's constantly boiling that water, if you will, to keep it warm for the minute that you happen to want to use hot water. So you're saving a lot in electricity as well, because you're not paying to keep that water hot all the time when you're not necessarily needing to use it. So it became popular a couple years ago just because of, the new design standards for buildings and homes and people wanting to have greener living. And so that's something that's kind of interesting to me. And if I were building a new house or looking to buy a new house, it would always be something that I would like to have. So just think about that if you need a new hot water heater.
Yeah, and one of my brothers installed a tankless system for his whole house, and man, he was telling me about it, and I was just like, this is the future. I mean, I love it. It's heat water on demand.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about leaks either. Like, I had a hot water heater that busted, like the copper pipe just had this tiny little hole in it, and so I didn't even know it till it was like maybe a day later or something, and I just saw the paint spackling, kind of falling off of the ceiling, because our hot water heater's on one of the middle levels of the house. And I was like, what's going on up there? And sure enough, it's just like this little spew of water coming out of the copper pipe. So you wouldn't even like have this pile of water just sitting there, right? Like you would just have this tankless system. It's amazing.
Interesting.
They're popular in tiny houses because of they're such a small profile that they can like tuck away behind a little cabinet, and they can be run on propane or electricity, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're really small. They're just like a tiny little box. Yeah. I saw them in like a wall once, and they were showing me the construction of it, and I was like, that's nice.
Yeah, and it's indefinite.
Yeah, and a lot
take like a hour-long shower, and you'd never run out of hot water.
But
you wouldn't do that.
But you wouldn't, because you are saving water.
Yeah,
as soon as I said that, I was like,
2-minute timer. But if you have a family, you don't have to okay, we got to wait an hour for the next
which is what
person.
We've run into. We have a small water heater because we don't have a bathtub, so we only need, I think ours is 20 liters. I don't know what that is in gallons. And it's if all four of us take a shower and I've done the dishes, the last person taking a shower kind of notices that it's not as warm.
Sing that song, get in and out.
Yeah.
Oh,
when you have a budding teenager, she does not understand the 5-minute shower. So it's a little harder.
Depends on if you have to shave your legs or not that day.
Yeah. Or if you're singing a song, she does that. She gets in there, starts singing.
Gets into it.
Yeah, gets right into it. 15 minutes later, you're like banging on the door.
Something sort of related to hot water and, keeping energy, conserving energy as well, is just insulate your pipes, especially if you're in like cold weather. Yeah. You can buy foam for under $1 for a strip, and, put it around your pipes that are exposed. And especially in the winter, you want to cover up your outdoor spigots to prevent freezing and prevent water from getting, stuck in there, frozen or whatever. So obviously, this if you've owned a home and you've lived in a cold place, or even Texas, we have to do that. But that can save you a lot of money if your pipes bust, So
yeah, we have to do sometimes up here is the opposite. They tell you to keep your tap on to keep that
you drip it.
You have to drip it, or else, because we've had the same thing. Our pipes froze in the middle of March because we're having a very, very cold winter, and so a whole week without water in the house. That'll learn you how to conserve water. I'll tell you that. Holy cow! Try to pour plastic bottles in the sink to try to do dishes. No. Yeah.
Just go melt the snow, right?
Oh yeah, there's snow fleas in there.
And this is more just on the safety side of things, right? But if we do have some sort of issue where your water line might break or whatever, and you don't have water to your home, do the best that you can to fill up your tub, and you use the hot water, because you have hot water sitting in your hot water tank. So when you turn on the hot water knob, you will plug the bottom of the tub, and you'll have a source of water for however many days it can last you.
Yeah, we don't have a tub, but that would be good if you did.
Get some buckets, girl.
Yeah, we were planning on. That's never happened before, and it hasn't happened since. So
that's something they tell you in preparing for a weather event or an emergency is fill your tub up with water, and use that for days if you can use that for days if you don't have access. That's something I hope we never have to do. But also to keep your pipes from freezing, open the cabinets, turn the heat on, expose the pipes to as much heat as you can. And hopefully if you drip them and do all those things, you don't have to deal with that headache. I forgot to do that on New Year's Eve this year and didn't have water for a few days. So.
Oh man.
Not
it
fun.
was chilly this past winter. I mean, it was my first Texas winter, but I was surprised.
Yeah, it was a little cooler than we've been used to the last few years, but we used to get pretty cold winters, but then it started warming up for some reason. I don't know why.
One other thing I wanted to mention really quick was if you are buying any fixtures, water fixtures of any sort, there's usually a little logo. I think it's an EPA logo that says water sense on it, and that'll let you know that it's been rated to have a low flow gallons per minute rating. So you can even kind of do research on that. But if you're buying like a new faucet for your sink or shower head, even like a new appliances and those types of things like a dishwasher or washing machine, it'll have that little label on it that'll say water sense, and that'll let you know that you'll be getting something that has the least amount of water usage compared to other brands.
Yeah, even toilets have them.
Yes.
Some.
So going back outdoors real quick, if you have any pools or any ponds or something that are exposed, especially in the summer, cover them up to keep them from evaporating and then preventing you from having to use them as much. That's another good small thing you can do.
Yeah,
anybody have any other?
Sorry, my brother lives in San Diego, and they deal with drought all the time. I mean, it's just been bad, and that's where a lot of our food is grown. So just kind of think about where you're purchasing your food from as well, and the strategies that they might be using to water that food, because some are a lot more wasteful than others. So if you go to some of the farmers markets, especially in Austin, if you have the opportunity, a lot of them are using the hydroponic systems. So it recirculates the water, and it uses a lot less water than just irrigating the land. So that's just something to kind of look at and keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I was just in California last week, and that's where my parents live, although only for one more day. But yeah, I was visiting with some family there as well. And yeah, they were talking about that very thing. I mean, California, Central Valley just exports crazy amount of food all over the world. Now, granted, they do have like a freshwater delta system up north, the San Joaquin Delta, and stuff like that. But there are quite a bit of rice fields, believe it or not,
Yeah.
in Central California, and you're like, no,
We
that's
have
not.
them in Texas too. Like we have to release water from our dams per the master wizard water master guy, and it's because these farmers that are further south are growing wild Texas rice and they have water rights. And so if we don't let the water out of these dams to get the water to them, then they start hollering. And I'm like, maybe we shouldn't be growing rice in Texas. Like, I don't know.
Exactly right. Yeah, and my brother was reading to me some statistics about how much water rice uses, like per whatever it was per acre or something like that, compared to other crops. And obviously there are parts of the world that get a ton of rain, and so they are totally appropriate places to grow rice. But in areas that don't get that same amount of rainfall, like California and Texas, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. So that's a good point. Is that maybe it's just good to become educated as to the crops that are being grown in our region, our state, our province, whatever the case may be, and just
There's a really interesting book that goes over this. We may have talked about this in a previous episode. It's called Cadillac Desert, and it essentially talks about how the West and the Midwest are deserts, and we're forcing them to be these lush green places that grow these crops that shouldn't grow there, and we're essentially depleting the water supply, and we're redirecting it from places that need it, and we're kind of ruining, this part of the world just to support agriculture and progress and all that. It's an interesting read if you want to learn more about all that and get a little depressed at the same time. but I mean, it's stuff we need to talk about and we need to know about, because we shouldn't be, lawns aren't necessary, and growing rice in deserts isn't smart. So let's get smart about how we do this and grow the crops that are appropriate and cover crops and things like that.
I will say, on a lighter note, in California they grow a lot of grapes, and it's for all the wine country. And they said when they have a drought that it actually makes better wine because it doesn't water down the grape. So I guess kind of the more raisiny type that the grape can get to, the least amount of water that's in it, is the more flavor that you get in the wine, and it makes better wine. So yeah,
interesting.
That is 100% true, because my brother, who works in the wine industry, told me that very same thing just a few days ago. And I was going to say, Jen, the drink that you were having at the beginning of the show
it's gone now.
So,
it was just a little bit of bubbles, just a little bit of champagne.
Yeah.
I had to do a little celebratory drinking today. I had a good day.
Yay!
So I was going to say, I wonder if we should
class,
expect.
Of course, I had to work up for it.
That's right. I was thinking, did we expect Jen to get more looser and more gregarious as the show goes on?
Man, you're in trouble.
Busted. Anybody have anything else they want to throw in or talk about while we're talking about water conservation? And
I was going to say, an indirect way you could help conserve water is buying secondhand clothes. The fashion industry uses an incredible amount of water to make brand new clothes for washing the dyes and processing the fabric and stuff. So just buying a secondhand pair of jeans, I think, saves like almost 130 liters of water or something like that per pair of jeans. So just things like that. Yeah.
And speaking of clothes, when you wash your clothes, wash full loads only.
Yes. Same with your dishwasher, full loads.
Yeah, full loads on your dishwasher, because if you're just doing several half loads, the water, it's basically using the same amount of water and energy. And if you can wash it all on cold, no, that's not necessarily saving you water, but it's saving you energy. And keeps your clothes going longer. You know, they don't wear out as fast. Also, wash your clothes less. You don't have to wash them with every wear. If you didn't wear them that long, if they didn't get dirty, you don't have to wash them. And it, again, keeps your clothes from wearing out, keeps you from spending more money, et cetera, et cetera.
Pretend you're camping.
Huh?
Spot, yeah. Pretend you're camping.
Yeah. Just wear it all week. It's fine.
Turn it
I was gonna
inside out. You're
mention-
good.
One more thing, I think we talked about it in an earlier broadcast, but a little adapter that you can put on your shower between the pipe that comes out of the wall and your shower head. It's this little adapter that is like a pause valve, I think it's called, but you just press a button and it reduces the flow of water to just a trickle. So that when you're shampooing your hair or doing whatever, and you're not having to stand underneath the water, you just press that little button, and it's a lot of water saved right there.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add is, you know, if you're washing dishes by hand or you're doing anything, washing your hands, brushing your teeth, like she said earlier, just you don't have to leave the water running the whole time, and you don't have to leave it full blast. You know, a lot of people have a tendency to wash dishes with the stream running the whole time. If you're going to wash by hand, fill up the sink and then rinse on the lowest stream possible, but don't, you know, blast the water and try to soak things so you don't have to run it the whole time. There's just so many little things we can all do to minimize water use, help the planet, and help our pocketbook because we're using less water. Lower bills. So
I'd also just like to direct people to takecareoftexas.org. There's a ton of helpful tips and tricks for conserving water and conserving energy and all sorts of different things you can do, which also shows you how much money you can save on your bills.
absolutely. Oh, one more thing. Bottled water is awful, and if you don't, if you have access to, you know, clean, healthy water at home, try to drink that. If you can buy filters to, you know, treat it yourself if you don't like the way it tastes. But you know, bottled water uses plastic. Obviously, it's stored in plastic. It's transported usually from places that need it, and we're taking that away. And so it's using energy. It's displacing water. It's very unnecessary because I mean, you can just drink tap water. I drink tap water all the time, but if you're not comfortable with that, again, there's ways to treat it in bulk or, you know, try to just be more conscious of where your water's coming from and not necessarily grabbing a bottle every time.
I think it's kind of funny that people think bottled water is actually somehow better for them because like maybe it was like in some like fresh, pristine spring but has never seen any sort of contamination, but that's really not the case. It's literally just the same kind of water you get from your tap. They've just filtered it. So you can buy filters that do the exact thing and it will save you a ton of money. And it's also a convenience thing. Like, I understand that, and, you know, it has its purpose in certain circumstances, but it shouldn't be the norm. You know, when I go to people's houses and their fridge is just stocked full of bottled water, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, just get a filter. Use the filter on your fridge. Get a Berkey filter, a Brita filter, anything, you know, and it'll make it taste and smell great. And you're drinking tap water anyway, so you'll be saving a lot of money.
Yeah. And get a reusable water bottle or 10, you know, if that's the issue, I need to be able to carry it. I mean, those things are so much more durable. They pay for themselves. You can, you know, they keep it cold or hot or whatever's in there, you know. So yeah, there's just so many benefits, and I just don't understand paying for water when it comes out of your faucet for free. But
yeah, if you have safe drinkable water, yeah, you should. You don't need to be buying bottled water.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, for people who like the pitcher method, you know, putting the filter in the pitcher and then refilling the pitcher from your tap just to get filtered water. I looked into this last summer, and I grew up on Brita, using Brita filters in our family. But last summer, I was, and maybe you guys can tell me otherwise, 'cause I didn't actually look on Brita's website, but I looked at all of the packaging, and they didn't have any instructions or even mention recycling the filters. Whereas the company Pure, P-U-R, they state on the box that you can actually send the filter back to Pure or Pure, however they pronounce it, and they'll recycle filters. Just wanted to make that note.
So I'm not sure if Brita takes them directly, but I know that they take them through TerraCycle, which is a website where you can sign up to collect a lot of hard to recycle items, and that's one of them. So that's an option, or if not, go with a brand that's easily recyclable, because that can be an issue. You're trying to cut back on one thing and then you're impacting the environment in another way. A lot of people will just use charcoal filters too, like pieces of charcoal. I haven't looked into how, effective or safe that is, so I don't want to endorse that. But that's a more natural option, and charcoal breaks down a little easier than plastic, and that's a lot of times what's in those filters anyway. So, but yeah, I would look into that website if you're using Brita and want to wait. And they, like I said, have tons of other things you can recycle: toothpaste containers and cigarette butts. It's crazy the things that they'll collect.
So takecaretexas.org.
That's the site that has the resources. Yeah.
Then
TerraCycle.com is the site that you can recycle a lot of different things on. Yeah. So did anyone have anything else to discuss pertaining to water conservation? Any other exciting?
Also, eating less meat, eating less animal products also helps with reducing.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that the majority of the agriculture industry is to feed cows. So like all the corn that we grow all around here, if you see those cornfields, that's not going to like your HEB to buy. That's getting turned into feed for cattle.
Yeah. So even if it's just when Instagram has this Meatless Monday hashtag and things like that, even if you cut down one meal, makes a big difference, and that'll snowball. So
absolutely. Yep. Cows are or agriculture is the #1 use of water, I think, in the world, right? At this point, it's a huge contributor to climate change, but also just sucks up a lot of resources. But soon we'll have lab-grown meat, so we'll use less water and less if people can actually stomach that. So we'll see how that goes.
I don't remember if I mentioned it before, but there is this new company called Sun-Fed Foods. Did we talk about this? They're using chickpeas and turning it into what tastes like chicken, and everyone loves it. It's this new craze. It's like this company out of Australia, but hopefully they'll have manufacturing worldwide in the future, but they just got started. So
what's it called
keep
again?
a lookout. I think it was Sun-Fed Foods, and apparently it tastes like chicken.
Is that their motto? Tastes like chicken.
I mean, everything tastes like chicken because it really doesn't have flavor, right?
Well, that is our show, and if you are listening and you have other ideas or practices that you do, please feel free to share those with us. We'd love to hear what you do to conserve water, and if you have any ideas for future shows, we'd love to hear them. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, and also on Facebook, Instagram. I'm sorry, not on Instagram, but Facebook and Twitter on the Epically Geeky page. We'll be posting these shows there. And then, of course, we'll go around and talk about how we can find all of you guys online. So, Chris, where can we find you?
I'm part of the Epically Geeky family, so Epically Geeky and Marginally Geeky, and here, and on Instagram at Cedar Birch Cottage.
Awesome. Jen?
I typically just promote the centexsustains.org website. It's our local partnership that we have with the cities in Fort Hood, and we have a lot of resources on there. And if you have any comments or questions, those go directly to my email. So you can get me at centexsustains.org.
Awesome. Stefan, are you still off the grid other than this site?
Yes, ma'am.
One of these days we're going to convert him, I think.
You can write a
fingers
letter.
crossed.
You can write a letter.
I'm gonna get a dummy account
Stefan
or
Sequeira, Texas, United States.
Texas. Um, well, you can find me, of course, here on Sustainably Geeky. I'm also on Epically and Marginally Geeky with Chris, and Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Het's Gonna Be Me. So, like I said, the show is part of the Epically Geeky family. So check out that show if you're interested in geeky topics, and Marginally Geeky is our book club. You can find us on all of the usual social media channels through that. With that, we'd like to thank you for listening. Have a good night.